Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalang.
Hare Krishna, welcome to our channel Bhagavad-gita. Here it is, because we have Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and my name is Bhagavad-gita. So we have been reading chapter 11 for a while, the universal form, and I know when I sit down to read, and especially when I sit down to speak, I'm always trying to think, so how can I relate this to my daily life, to my practical existence? And universal form is sometimes maybe a little bit difficult to relate, because many of the other chapters, Bhagavad Gita has such a, practical approach to philosophy. Because philosophy, one definition of philosophy is a description of reality. And then we see reality, but we don't see all of it. And then we try to, I think the research of scientists I'm not up to date. This could be an old concept, I don't know. But they speak about the unified field theory. So they want to find a theory that explains all the other theories, that ties everything together. And it's very difficult to do, because we don't see everything. Our perspective is limited to the perspective of our senses. And even if we can use microscopes or telescopes to see closer and further, it still goes through our eyes. Everything, all the input we get is through our senses, and our senses are by nature limited, and there are things beyond our senses. And then sometimes that sounds a little bit too fantastic to be taken seriously, but at the same time we know so many things that we can't touch and see. Like you go out in town and everybody has a mobile phone, and they know they have a signal, and they know they are connected through their phone. They can't see that connection. No, we can know about it, but we can't see it. But we know about it because somebody has told us about it. And then when we use it, it works. On so many things, our intelligence, we can't see our intelligence. We can do valiant efforts to measure the intelligence, but it's really difficult. But at the same time, we know it's there. Our ability to judge, to understand, and the definition is difficult to come by, but we can't say, oh, we can't see it, so therefore it doesn't exist. Like people nowadays do when we speak about the soul, when we speak about God. Oh, that's that's not realistic. We can't measure it, and therefore it doesn't exist. No, but we can clearly see the difference between a body that's alive and a body that is dead, and that's the definition of the soul. That life force, that person, that consciousness. Because everything else can be measured, but the fact that we are experiencing things, maybe we can measure the temperature, and we can, define the colors of everything we see. But that subjective experience of being a person who consciously is aware of the situation, that is beyond what we can measure and quantify and categorize, because it's of a spiritual nature. And likewise, God is of a spiritual nature, and He's bigger than us. Our consciousness is connected to our presence in this particular body, so we can see so far, we can hear so far, we can experience the situation within our body. God is expanding. Krishna is expanding in the form of Paramatma. He's in everyone's heart. He's experiencing everything that anyone experiences in this world, and still He's beyond it, because it all comes from Him. And it is not surprising that we can't immediately measure Him or quantify Him or prove His existence or non-existence. That is natural. But the Bhagavad-gita is supplying what we lack by giving us this information. And in this chapter we're hearing of the universal form. And the universal form is really fantastic, because it takes everything in the universe being expansions of Krishna's energy. Krishna can also claim it and say, yes, I am also here. And he can give Arjuna that vision, so that he sees from the bottom of the universe to the top of the universe. So it's quite fantastic, but it's part of the, like it fits within the scope of Bhagavad-gita, because Krishna is giving Bhagavad-gita to Arjuna, who is asking these existential questions. He doesn't start exactly with that, but he's saying, I'm here in this situation, and I don't see why I should be here, but at the same time, I don't see how I can give it up, and now I'm confused, and I don't know what's my duty, and I don't know what to do. So I'm turning to you, Krishna. And Krishna starts with the second chapter of Bhagavad-gita. He doesn't just say, well, you're a warrior, and here's the battlefield. Just do it. No, not at all. Of course, that also comes up, because every aspect comes up, but basically he starts with explaining how Arjuna is not his body, how he's his spirit soul, and how we can't really understand our position in this world, who we are. And if we don't know who we are, then what basis do we have for prioritizing one activity over another? So we start there. And that's our Bhagavad Gita. But now we're in the 10th chapter. And if you're joining us here in the 10th chapter, you're welcome to start earlier, to go through it, because you get a better picture if you go through this in a more systematic way. And I have left links in the little box with information there, links for each chapter, because I know it's really difficult to find to find my channel or YouTube. If you search for Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't even come up, because we're not big like that. But still, I think it's worthwhile, because Bhagavad Gita is such a good book and so useful. And I will read the text 35 here. Sanjaya vacha etat shrutva vachanam keshavasya kritandhyalirve pamana kiriti namaskritva bhuya eva Krishnang sagat gahadang bhita pranamya. Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, O king, after hearing these words from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trembling Arjuna offered obeisances with folded hands again and again. He fearfully spoke to Lord Krishna in a faltering voice as follows. Yes, I've mentioned it a couple of times before, because I didn't start with the first chapter. There we would have gotten to know Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. But I skipped over it, because I thought that Mahabharata is a great epos of the ancient history of India. Bhagavad Gita is one chapter. And if you come out of Mahabharata, then the first chapter kind of bridges that gap. How do we get from all this action and stories and history to this very pure and direct philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita? So that's where the first chapter is in many ways. But if we don't come out of Mahabharata, then all these names, all these parts, things that come up in the first chapter, I thought I'd make it a little easier on everyone and skip it. But still, the fact is that Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna to Arjuna, but there is Sanjaya, who is a disciple of, I think, Vyasadeva. So he has this vision that he's able to envision what's happening on the battlefield, and he's speaking to Dhritarashtra, who is the father of the Arjuna's cousins, who are on the other side on the battlefield. So Dhritarashtra is very eager to hear what's going on. So Sanjaya is telling him. So therefore, in the middle of this conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, now suddenly we have Sanjaya describing the situation. Purport. As we have already explained, because of the situation created by the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjuna became bewildered in wonder. Thus he began to offer his respectful obeisances to Krishna again and again, and with faltering voice he began to pray, not as a friend, but as a devotee, in wonder. So there are these aspects of the relationships. We have a very personal theology. God is not just a concept or a power or someone who has to be obeyed. That is also there, obviously. He's God, Krishna is God, Krishna is very powerful, and the basis of all religions is actually doing what God tells us. But in this modern world where, well, I'm from Sweden, I know this is not true everywhere, but here religion has really been pushed out to the margins of existence, and it's not taken very seriously at all. And often, therefore, people come to it from a background of not being very connected to religion, and then you hear God says you have to do this and you have to do that, and there's so many rules, and they're thinking, why should he tell me what to do? I don't have to listen to that. And we don't have to. We're in the material world, we have a choice. But the reason Krishna is speaking in Bhagavad-gita and God is there in so many scriptures, and their religion is very much based on what God is telling us to do. The reason is that we are of that spiritual nature, and we come to this material world where we forget our original spiritual nature because we wanted to forget that. And here we get the opportunity to travel across the universe, birth after birth, different life forms, different planets, to try and fulfill our desires in different ways. The problem is, though, that we are spirit, soul, and we are in a body of matter, in a place of matter, and we're not really compatible. So whatever we try for, there will always be something lacking. And therefore Krishna is reaching out to us and saying, so at the point when you wake up, kind of like Arjuna saying, who am I? What is the meaning of life? What am I doing here? Well, then Krishna is already there guiding us. So Bhagavad-gita is not just a book of knowledge, and Bhakti Yoga, which we are practicing, is not just a means of self-realization, but it's actually connecting us to that deepest relationship we have with the Supreme Lord, which is a loving relationship and a personal relationship. And therefore Krishna is saying, sometimes we find it in all the religions, do this, don't do that. And it's not that God is a control freak, because he doesn't have to be, because he can control absolutely everything. That's not why he's telling us what to do. He's giving us these guidelines because they're helpful. When we are starting to wake up to our spiritual nature, and when we are starting to take steps towards that self-realization, then Krishna tells us, yes, these things, they will help you. These things, they will be an obstacle. Or several obstacles. I don't know. There are so many obstacles. So therefore, we have this information. But religion goes beyond that, or religion should go beyond that. Prabhupada used to say when people would try to corner him on, what religion and so on. He says, so that religion which awakens love of God, that is a good religion. So basically all the religions, that's what they are meant for. But we're all different. We have different levels of realization. We have different cultural backgrounds. We have different, directions or aims in life. And therefore, wherever we are, we can start to take up, to connect back to God, to Krishna. But that activity, it's just like if you want to study something, you want to study mathematics. So if you're a little child and you haven't been to school and you don't know anything, then first you have to learn to kind of understand the concept of numbers and maybe draw the numbers or count little objects and put them in groups. And then when you come a little further, then you will learn addition and subtraction and all of that. And then you can study on such a deep level that mathematics, which seems to be the most concrete, uncomplicated thing, that it's either it's right or wrong. There's no discussion there, no feelings. It's just facts. But math also becomes kind of mystical when you go deep enough. So all of those levels are mathematics. But depending on the person's ability, level, or previous studies, we start at different levels. And the same thing with God consciousness. We start on different levels, but the Bhagavad-gita gives us the basis of the full, complete philosophy and theology of Krishna consciousness. And then the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us a fully bloomed, it's not just the point of the philosophy, but we can see it, how it happens, how it's acted out by devotees in the history of the universe. So therefore, here, Arjuna is showing one reaction, which is part of the relationship, because we all have relationship to God. He's not just an object or a principle or a power. He's a person. We are persons. He loves us. He actually loves us. And we are all invited to wake up that love of God that is naturally there in a dormant sense in our hearts. And that is a personal relationship. We can love Krishna like our master, and we're his servant. We can love Krishna like our friend, and then we're his friend. We can love him like our child, and then we're his parents. And we can love him like a, like a girlfriend, and then he's our boyfriend. That depends on our desire. But that desire, that's why we do all this yoga aspect of it with the purification and the understanding and the studies, because we can't prematurely just decide, okay, I'm going to love God now. God's my boyfriend now. No, that's not how it works. There is a natural, real relationship in our heart. And when we manage to step out of all the ahankara, the false ego, the identification we have with our body, with our mind, with our senses, with our family, with our culture, with our background, it's not that we give everything up, but we can actually step out of that identification when we realize the real identity, who we really are. And then that relationship is there. And here Arjuna becomes bewildered in wonder. With a faltering voice he began to pray. And that is one of the aspects in a relationship. It is not a constant one, but it comes up every once in a while. So Bhagavad-gita is philosophical and practical. When we finish Bhagavad-gita, we can read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we can continue to hear scriptures and descriptions, and that will help us and assist us in developing that love of Godhead. So this theology, this philosophy, this knowledge, it goes all the way from the most basic point that we are not this body to the most elevated level of relating to God as a person. So that's what we're dealing with, a wonderful theology that we can put practically to work in our lives to turn our existence back into a spiritual reality. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare